Hello, and thanks for joining us for tonight's stories. Tonight's three encounters all come from the state of Texas. There must be something squatchy in that water down there. So, with that being said, pull up a stump and get comfortable with everyone else, and let's dive right into our first encounter of tonight. This encounter dates back to 1982, Parker County, Texas. My girlfriend and I were parking on the edge of a creek flowing into the back of a lake. It was dark and under the cover of trees where we were parked. You could not see your hand in front of your face. We had the windows cracked a little and were in the back seat of the car when we heard something out of the ordinary. We had been there before, so we knew the usual night sounds in the area. An owl lived in the big tree nearby and hooted all the time. The hill in front of the car went down to a swamp with a creek in the middle going to the lake. There were crickets, frogs, and locusts all making their normal sounds that night, but we heard something coming through the leaves in the bottoms. It sounded like it was heading to our car. I've spent a lot of time in the woods hunting, fishing, and trapping growing up, so I don't get spooked too easily. At first I thought it was a cow, but then noticed all the night sounds were gone. No frogs, no crickets, even that owl, dead quiet, all except the footsteps. They were on 2 feet, a step and a drag step, like it had a hurt foot or something. Then, being a kid, I thought of all the horror movies I watched and figured it was a guy who jumped the train and was coming to kill us and take our car. As the steps got closer, I got really bugged. It was coming up the hill right at the car. Finally, after what I thought was an eternity, I flew over the front seat and started the car. The only problem was, it was a new car she just bought, and I never drove it. She was screaming about dying or something when I threw it in reverse and stomped the gas. I was there before and knew the road opened up behind me, so as I was going backwards, I hit the light switch. This was a big mistake because it turned out to be the cigarette lighter. As soon as we came out of the tree cover, we got some moonlight and I found the headlight switch. This all happened really quick, but I looked up and there was this animal leaping over the hill, going into the creek. It was really wide at the shoulders and had almost no neck. I thought at first it was a bear, but there were not any bears in this area. I saw a big, brownish black creature running through the trees. I saw 2 shoulders and the back of the head go between 2 trees, later measured to be about 4.5 feet apart. It covered between them easily. I asked my girlfriend if she saw it, and she said she saw a brown spot in the lights, like a bear on 2 legs. I think the car scared it, so we went to town for help. After we got more people with trucks and lights and some equipment, we came back. We left the truck lights shining in the bottoms and looked around for tracks with our flashlights. We started to look for footprints. The ground was dry and covered with leaves, but we did find large scrapes going up the hill to where the car was parked. They looked like it was where the animal jumped over the hill. They were very far apart. I had to stretch out as far as I could from the one to the bottom to the one at the top. I am 6'4" with a 38-inch inseam. This was a large stride. This is when the whole woods went quiet again. It was nuts. 5 pretty big guys all standing in a circle like a herd of buffalo back to back. Scared, I guess. None of us moved a muscle. Flashlights and guns pointing out at the dark. We listened to the dead quiet of the woods. Then all of a sudden, a tree limb snaps loud, and then everything gets back to normal. Then, one by one, the frogs, the crickets, and that owl all started making noise again. Really strange night, for sure. The next day, my brother and a friend went to walk the creek with buckshot and our shotguns. We walked about a half-mile down the creek, spread out like small game hunting. We came to the area where the railroad tracks were up on the hill. My brother was at the bottom, I was in the middle, and my friend was on the farthest from the hill. Then we heard a lot of racket, and I looked over to my brother. He yelled my name in a really scared voice as something was going up over the hill. I remember seeing trees bending back as if being used to help something get up and over the top. When I got to where my brother was, he was on one knee and had his gun pointed up at the hill. I said, "What was it?" And he said, "I don't know, but it was big." We found 2 marks on the really steep bank going up to the railroad tracks. I tried to climb it and I couldn't. The marks were in the middle of the hill and at the top. Something very strong and very powerful went up that hill. It had a big stride also. The hill was about an 80% incline. So that concludes our first encounter from Parker County, Texas. What do you think of that one? Maybe they'll think twice before going parking in those woods again. So let's dive right into our second encounter. This encounter comes to us from 2013. This is Cherokee County, Texas. I lived in a lake cabin for my first year of college. The lake and surrounding land are owned by a hunting club that has been around since the lake was built in the 1930s. My closest neighbor was an older gentleman that had lived most of his life on this property. He always reminded me to take some kind of protection when I went hiking. I never pay him too much attention. In 2013, in early November, I can't remember the date, I decided to go hiking that afternoon. So around 2 p.m. I was headed out the door, walking past my neighbor's house and waving at him as I made my way to the trailhead. I hung my orange flag on the post to let people know I was hiking on that part of the property in hunting season. No flags were on the post when I got there, so I know I was the only one on that particular part of the property. It was a small hunting club with only 20-ish members, so if someone was on the hill beside me, it was unlikely. So I continued on the trail about a mile to the first plot, where I usually crept around the corner before I got there, because there may be some deer that I would stop and watch from a distance. This time there were not any deer, so I started to walk the plot. Now I'm going to take a second to describe the immediate geography of this part of the property. The trail hugged the side of the hill, and at this point I was near to the top. The feed plot was just off the left side of the trail, and immediately to the right of the trail the hill dropped off pretty harshly to a wash that ran to the lake. I would say it dropped about 25 feet to the bottom of the wash, and it was steep enough that if I fell in I would not be able to climb back up to the trail. So I started to walk into the clearing of the feed plot. Then, outside of a pump jack that was about 300 yards away that constantly ran because it was automated, everything went quiet. Birds stopped chirping. Squirrels got still. I was being watched by something. The woods just don't go silent like that, so I immediately went on guard. At this moment I was standing in the middle of the feed plot, 20 yards away from the tree line in any direction. Scared, I turned around to see if I could retreat back to where I came from, because I had nothing on me. I was ill prepared to defend myself if I needed to. After I turned around and saw that nothing was behind me, but not sure what was watching, I quickly walked back to the tree line. The moment I got back to the tree line facing the direction of the trailhead, I heard what sounded like something of a low grumbling whoop to my right side. That's the hillside of the trail, and I froze. Taking a second to collect my thoughts of, I walked right past this thing, and it is between me and the house, I made the decision to confront it, thinking it may be a black bear. They are rare in that part of Texas, but people do see them from time to time. I'm 6 foot 2 inches and 240-ish pounds at this point. This is what you're supposed to do with a black bear. And hogs, wolves, mountain lions, they don't make the sound I just heard. So I yelled, "Hey, this is my hill." And it stepped out from behind a pine tree about 10 yards to my front and right. And it yelled back at me. It was a lot bigger than me. After that, it took one step over the trail and jumped to the bottom of the wash. I could hear it running on 2 feet for a few seconds. I ran back to the house. My neighbor said he heard a deep, echoing yell before he saw me running home. So that concludes our second encounter. That one was from Cherokee County, Texas. Note, we also had that dead silence in the wilderness. You guys ever encounter that? Let me know in the comments. Our final and third encounter of the night goes back to 2012. This is from Liberty County, Texas. I am a 56-year-old of sound mind, and with many of those years spent hunting and exploring Liberty County and other East Texas woods and bottoms. I continue my passion of wilderness backpacking with recent trips to the toughest areas in Big Bend National Park, with a solo backpack on the Eagle Rock Loop in Arkansas, where I came face to face with a bear. I am cautious but composed when I get into the woods, and not inclined to overreact to critical incidents in the wilds. The other night, while walking at an edge of Liberty that leads down towards uninhabited Trinity Bottoms, I saw something. Now, disclaimer, although I did see something, I acknowledge that minds play tricks on perceptions and imaginations fill in gaps around what eyes see and don't see. I have taken several days to soberly sift the conclusion that I will now share. At about 10:30 p.m., I was walking along an area on the edge of Liberty that leads down towards the Trinity Bottoms. My mind was completely at ease and drifting around various projects, backpacking memories, and dreams of purchasing a new gun. The night was clear, and I was enjoying the moon and stars. I was carrying my trusty old golf club for safety. All of a sudden, a supercharged adrenaline rush focused all of my concentration on movement on my side of a tree located about 50 yards in front of me. You have experienced these moments, from daydreams to instantly tense, all in fight or flight in a fraction of a second. My arms and hands began tingling, my ears rang with a TV static kind of sound, and my vision and hearing became sharply acute. Whether or not my perception is accurate, this instantaneous physiological rush was 100% real. It was a time standstill, brief loss of motor skills moment. My adrenaline focus involuntarily targeted a large, shoulder high to the lower limbs of a sizable tree, bipedal something, walking deliberately around a tree and down towards the bottoms. The walk was upright but a little hunched from the upper mid back up, and the head was erect. The color was a burnished red-gray, and I'll share more on the gray in a second. The walk was the swaying gait of a Star Wars Wookiee, but quite a bit less exaggerated, with knees slightly bent. The swinging arc of the right arm was very visible, and I saw that the arm, wrist, hand was somewhat longer than normal human proportions. It used its left hand to push aside a limb. It took a brief, glancing look at me, and moonlight made visible the standard eyes, nose, forehead, jaw features of a hairy face. The center of the face was less hairy and seemed to be slightly more gray. This glance did not slow its motion. In fact, the deliberate motion became more purposeful as it pushed around the tree and back into thicker trees. Note, this was a 2 or 3 second glimpse before the it disappeared into thicker trees and brush. My reaction was instant. I called my wife on my cell phone and told her that I saw something and I was getting the heck out of there fast. Instead of following the trail, it would have taken me nearer to the location of the glimpse. I tore straight through from where I stood to a gate of the area and closer to more developed liberty. So that concludes our third Texas encounter of the night. So what do you guys think of that one? What do you think about that? He described a supercharged adrenaline rush where he lost senses. You guys ever experience something like that when you go from calm to almost panic in that split second? Yeah, let me know in the comments what you think of that one. And there must be something in the water in Texas, because it sure seems to be awful squatchy down there. Let me know if you guys have any other encounters from that Texas area. I'd love to hear from you guys. You can see the email up on the screen. Yeah, reach out and we could share your encounter on a future night here at Bigfoot Lake. So hope you guys all have a great night. Hope you enjoyed the encounters. Don't forget to hit that thumbs up and leave a comment. It sure helps us out a lot. Hope you guys have a great night, and we'll see you on the next.